I'm Dennis Dover, the Regional Vice Chancellor here at USF for Advancement, and we'd like to thank you for coming out tonight and to this wonderfully hosted event by the Sarasota Herald Tribune. Thank you, Tom, for bringing Hot Topics to USF.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Over the past year, our Chancellor, Dr. Sandra Stone, and the team here have been actively pursuing our next 5 years. What are we going to look like? And one of our hallstones for our next 5 years is community engagement. How do we actively engage the community so that we are the one-stop university for you to think about in our community when it talks about really getting the community up in front and personal. So that's a real big goal of ours. This campaign for grade level reading is exactly those kind of programs that we want to participate in over the next 5 years and beyond. We've been a happy partner over the last year and a half, starting the campaign for grade level reading in Manatee County. And that's been a wonderful partnership working with all the partners. Manatee County grade level reader folks, hand in the air. Let's see who you are. Woohoo! Sarasota partners, Sarasota grade level reading, hands in the air. These are the folks that are steering the process for making sure that every third grader can read on grade level by the end of their third grade year. Very important milestone for our community. That will have far-reaching effect that we can't even talk about tonight. We won't even know what will happen if we can get our third graders reading on grade level. Tonight's moderator, Tom Tyrant, with the opinion editor from Herald Tribune, has played a pivotal role in grade level reading since it began. So Tom, we thank you for all that you've done putting us there. And a nice aha as we end. We turned 40 years old in the community this year, the University of South Florida, Sarasota, Manatee. So we really want you to celebrate with us at several of the events that are going to be happening throughout the community. And Patrick, thank you also for what the Herald Tribune has done to help us. So without further ado, I turn the mic over to Tom.
Great, thank you very much.
But I really don't give it.
Yeah, you don't give me the mic. Well, good, thanks. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, USF, the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, our publisher, Pat Dorsey, and all my Herald Tribune colleagues. Hi. And most of all, thank you to everybody in this room for your interest in this vital topic. So let me just give you a quick rundown of how this evening will unfold. First, Ron and I will begin a conversation, not about our favorite baseball team, although we might take a minute or two, and about his work and how it might be utilized in Manatee and Sarasota counties. Then we'll bring the panel on stage for a discussion, followed by questions and answers from the audience. And we will have 2 mics out there in the audience. And I promise you that we will finish promptly at 7 p.m. or 7:02, something like that. So just so you know, this event is being recorded by Manatee Educational Television. You can find them at metvweb.com. And let's see, this will air, Charles Clapsaddle tells me, at 8 p.m. Friday night on Bright House 645 and Verizon 31. Okay, I got that right? I got it right. So let me just briefly introduce our special guest, Ron Fairchild. He is the president and CEO of the Smarter Learning Group, a national education consulting firm that focuses on public education. He's responsible for managing the National Community Sports Support Center, Support Center, which provides technical assistance to communities like ours that are working on grade level reading. So in January, if some of you remember, we hosted a forum with Ralph Smith, who I would describe as the orator-in-chief for grade level reading. Now, I'd like to say that Ron is the implementer-in-chief. His rhetoric will soar, but we're going to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about some of the details. He holds a BA in political science and history and has a Master of Education from Vanderbilt University, where David Price, who just got traded to the Blue Jays, he attended. And he lives outside of Baltimore with his 2 wives and son.
No, just one wife.
Oh, yeah.
Just one.
Yeah. So I kind of came late to that grade level reading thing. It was planned, I swear to God, it was planned. So anyway, please welcome committed husband.
That's right.
One wife, Ron Fairchild.
Thank you.
That's about like I spoke at a funeral for one of the great superintendents of Manatee County history, and the woman who lived down the street from me was the pianist at this funeral. And I said, wow, Mrs. Volador, I can't believe you're still playing.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the fact that Tom introduced Ralph Smith as the chief orator, because that means that the quotient for my eloquence is we've set the bar kind of low. So I don't have to be that eloquent tonight. So thank you, Tom.
You're
for that
welcome.
introduction.
So the relevant grade level reading numbers nationally, 67% of third graders nationwide are not reading at grade level.
Yeah.
80% of low income students are not reading at grade level. I think most of the people in this room know the why, the important part of having children learn to read proficiently at third grade. But why don't you just focus for us, when you're asked to say why, tell us why.
Yeah. It turns out that third grade reading proficiency is probably one of the best predictors we have for future success in education, for determining whether or not kids are going to graduate from high school, make a successful transition to college and career. It really is one of the best predictors we have, and it's also the time at which in our education system we sort of designed the first 4 years, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, for a time really for kids to learn how to read. That's the principal enterprise of education and during that time period. And then kids make a transition where reading is essential and integral to all other learning that they're going to do subsequent to that. So if we care about whether or not kids are prepared for science, technology, engineering, and math, try figuring out a word problem in 5th grade if you're not reading proficiently. So there's absolutely critical that we ensure that more of our kids meet this milestone.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, I think you see 4 major components in implementation in bringing kids to read by 3rd grade. Why don't you just kind of go down the list of what those are?
Sure.
And tell us a little bit about why they're important, and we will talk about some of the best practices that you've seen nationwide.
Mm-hmm. It turns out that there are things that communities can really do to help address this problem. And right now in our network, there are more than 200 communities in 42 states, the District of Columbia, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, who have all put a stake in the ground and said, we as communities can come together, just as Sarasota and Manatee have, and said, we can do far better than what we're doing currently. And that while schools certainly can get better and improve, there are many things that we as communities need to do to step up and provide more opportunities for kids. And we've seen 3 challenges that are roadblocks and obstacles for kids reaching reading proficiency. The first is that far too many of our kids show up to school at the beginning of kindergarten not fully prepared to take advantage of what school has to offer. And then we know far too many low-income kids especially have a problem with chronic absenteeism and miss far too much school. And we know right here, combined in Sarasota and Manatee, roughly 2,800 kids are chronically absent, meaning they miss 10% or more of the school year. They miss 2 or 3 days a month. Those absences add up. And obviously we know the effects of when kids aren't in school, aren't there to take advantage of instruction. And then finally, this area of summer learning loss, this pattern where too many kids experience this devastating setback over the summer months. And it turns out as we work with communities around the country to address these 3 challenges and barriers, they're amenable to change and to real progress and to real results. And we've actually seen communities that have begun to show progress in improving student outcomes in these 3 areas: improving readiness, reducing chronic absenteeism, improving summer learning opportunities. And do those 3 things together, it really positions schools to be successful in helping more kids reach this milestone of reading proficiency.
All right. Top several things to do
Sure.
that communities can do on school readiness. We'll go down the list.
Sure. So school readiness, first and foremost, I think there's a challenge around messaging about the importance of school readiness, and importantly, how do we help parents be successful in making sure that their kids are fully ready and fully prepared. We have a problem with the 30 million word gap, meaning that low-income kids hear fewer than 30 million words fewer than a typical middle or upper income child. Access to books, access to print-rich environments, voluntary pre-K, other kinds of opportunities that really expand the kind of learning and reading opportunities, early literacy opportunities for kids. Certainly something that we've seen in communities, a real commitment to expanding those programs, doing more parent outreach. I also think that we've seen that there are many health barriers to learning that take place before kids set foot in school. So it's really important, and we've seen communities make a big commitment to home visitation, to making sure that kids have adequate screening, that there's a full developmental screening, a thorough developmental screening for all kids, make sure that they don't have vision, hearing, other kinds of issues that are going to impede learning, and make sure that those things happen before they set foot in school.
So, okay, so let's take that visitation.
Yep.
Who does it really well? Who does it? I mean, who actually performs the tasks? And what kind of money are we talking about, by and large?
Yeah, so a range of different kinds of providers can do the home visitation. And what we've seen in communities is there are some kids and families who are particularly at risk and may need nurses, registered nurses, to do the home visitation. Some kids may need, and some families may not need as intensive a home visitation. So there's a lot of folks that are working on building networks of parents so that parents can talk to other parents and actually do some of that home visitation and some of those kinds of opportunities. So it really takes, I think, a range and a continuum of different types of providers.
Is there a standout community in this regard?
Yeah, I think there are many. We actually, in the campaign, we've identified 30 pace setters across the country. And actually, Sarasota is one of those pace setters for their work in summer learning. So I would love to give a round of applause for that. So out of that entire network, we've identified 30 pace setters. And we've actually got 7 or 8 of those in school readiness that we can point to that have actually shown improvements on school readiness measures. They've actually reduced the number of kids who have undetected, undiagnosed, untreated medical conditions before they start school, or they've shown increases in kids in their performance on readiness measures. So there are places we can point to. Our website actually has profiles of those communities, and that's grade-level-reading.net. There are specific stories, and really what I think is so powerful about that is there are a lot of folks who tend to look at problems like reading proficiency and the crisis around literacy that we face, and sometimes people feel like those problems are too big and they're intractable, and we're too divided as a society to really do anything together collectively. And it turns out that if you can point to some communities and show that you can actually do something about this, that evidence and those proof points really creates the kind of energy and the will that can turn out a room like this. And others around the community have had a wonderful time visiting with folks in Sarasota and Manatee, and I'm just so impressed with the fact that people are really mobilized and energized about this issue. And now the challenge is, how do we make sure that we translate that enthusiasm and that aspiration into real focused action that's going to produce larger scale results than what we've seen in some places that can make a difference for 100 kids, 200 kids, 1,000 kids. What we're really talking about is how do we fundamentally change the trajectory for thousands and thousands of kids here.
Okay.
Yep.
Attendance. What drives attendance? What prevents chronic absenteeism?
Yep. So first thing you got to do on attendance is get the data. And all schools track attendance the same way, right? Kids are either there or not there. So you have an advantage on attendance that you don't have sometimes on school readiness or summer learning, in that you have a common measure. One of the issues is that we tend to track attendance by average daily attendance. So schools will report 90% or 92% or 95% average daily attendance. And most people look at that and say, okay, that's pretty much an A in any context or setting. You feel like 92, 93% average daily attendance rate should be pretty good. But when you really unpack that number, and if you really look at who's absent on any given day, you find out the fact that there may be 20% of your kids who are absent 10% or more of the school year. So that you actually look at those numbers, not as who's here on any given day, but which one of our kids are out chronically, which ones miss 2 or 3 days every month. And we've worked in communities and can point to communities where they've said, we looked at our chronic absenteeism numbers and said, we didn't even know this was a problem. We thought everything was fine. And when they started looking at it, they have 20 to 25% of their kindergartners chronically absent. And that realization translated and moved them to action to say, surely someone can follow up and find out what the barriers are for attendance. Some kids have chronic asthma that's untreated. Finding solutions to that. Some kids face transportation barriers. That having a person in the building who is checking up on those kinds of things. I know in Manatee they're making an investment in graduation enhancement technicians in elementary schools. There's something really powerful about the notion of having a graduation enhancement technician in elementary schools, right? And to say early on, we're going to increase the odds of your graduating and making a successful transition. Part of their responsibility is to check in and check up on kids who show signs of chronic absenteeism or who may need extra intervention and support. And I'm a former teacher, and I like to say that if I had a graduation enhancement technician working with me, and I know they're going to be working with social workers, guidance counselors, and teachers to figure out what kids need, that's precisely the support that our teachers need more of. They need more support to make sure that the kids who need the extra time and attention are going to be in a position to get it. And so I'm really excited about that. We've seen attendance mentors, and we've seen wake-up calls that are recorded by famous people in the communities to do that. We've seen efforts like walking school buses where they mobilize parents to actually walk and knock on doors. Many kids are in households with parents who may work the night shift, may have difficulty with just getting up and out the door. Most kindergartners you talk to aren't going to say, I think I'm going to skip school today. That is not fundamentally a decision that kindergartners make or first graders make. There are issues involved in many of our kids' lives that need to be addressed.
When I was in kindergarten, I went for the nap. That was my favorite.
I was the snack.
Yeah.
The snack was what I was going.
And Dr. Green, we will let you have a chance to brag on your gets. So let's shift to summer learning loss. Sure. What really works?
Yeah, so
to prevent it.
Absolutely. So we basically have a system set up where we have a faucet of opportunity that's turned on for kids for 9 months out of the year. And we shut that faucet off rather dramatically for 3 months of the year. And the consequences are that some families are able to turn it back on and provide enrichment opportunities for their kids, take them to wonderful arts and cultural institutions and institutions of higher education and all kinds of resources that they know about, that they know how to access, and that they can in some cases pay for the kind of camps and enrichment experiences that kids need. And it shows that middle-income kids continue reading over the summer months on average, whereas low-income kids have this devastating setback, more than 2 months. So what really works is figuring out creative ways to turn that faucet on. And some kids need a very intensive opportunity over the summer months, a full day, 6-week summer enrichment program that blends the very best of what you would get in terms of a learning experience and the very best of what you might get in a summer camp experience. And I had the great pleasure earlier today, I visited 2 programs in Sarasota. one at the Boys and Girls Club and one at Girls Inc. And I know the Community Foundation in Sarasota and others are investing really heavily in efforts like that. And it's just what kids need. They get focused support in reading in the morning, and then they get to have the fun, enriching summer that everyone sort of thinks about when you think about how wonderful summer is. And we have this image of the idyllic and wonderful, memorable summer of our youth. And what those kids have access to, what I saw this morning was that kind of balanced, well-run, well-organized, enriching summer that would be the envy of anyone's kind of summer experience. So I think we need more of that. We also need to figure out how to unlock summer reading, engage public libraries. We see libraries across the country who are one of those few institutions that actually ramp up programming during the summer really intensively. They're providing meals for kids. We know right now that only 1 in 7 low-income kids, 1 in 7 who qualify for free and reduced meals, get them during the summer. So literally, the infrastructure we have in place to support kids' nutrition, feeding, a basic need, goes away during the summer months. And we have to figure out how to make sure that wherever kids are, whether they're in community centers, parks, libraries, at home, that we figure out creative ways to make sure those kids have access to nutrition and access to learning. And those are two things that I think we can really make a difference on those issues.
So when you talk to groups like this, to community members and leaders in communities, and they say, well, I support the blah, blah, blah program where kids get to go and they do good stuff in the summer. But what if they're not doing good stuff? How do you know if you're somebody out here and if you're asked to give or you've been giving to an organization that does summer programming? How do you know whether they're really getting that kind of quality instruction and the fun? What advice do you give to people in terms of where do you invest? How do you judge what really works?
Yeah. So for me, I have 2 boys, and I have the Adam and Matthew test. So when I go to programs, I look at those programs through the lens of would I be happy? Would I be confident? Would I be okay with my kids in this particular program? So that's the thing that I hold as a father, and that lens. We know what quality programs actually look like. I think going out and seeing programs, actually being able to spend some time in those programs and understand what some of the issues are, what some of the challenges are. The staff who are working in those programs work incredibly hard. And actually spending a little bit of time, I think you can really know. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you want to look for ratios that are smaller than you might see typically in a regular school environment. So when I was out today, I saw certified teachers working with 5 kids in reading. And they rotated, and those kids moved around, but you got to get the ratio small. Summer's an opportunity when you can really encourage students to get excited and motivated about learning. I mean, I talk to a lot of very successful people, especially in the sciences and technology, and you ask those folks, when did you get excited about science? When did you first think that you could have a career in science? And invariably, what they tell you is they went to a science center, they did a camp, they tinkered in the garage, they did something that was really engaging and that turned them on and got them excited. So summer is the time when you help kids tap into their interests and you help them become students of their interest and you ignite that passion and that motivation that's really going to propel them through education. It's when learning should be fun. It shouldn't be something where we say, well, you have to go to the learning center before you go do the fun stuff. This is an opportunity, really, to sort of break out of the traditional mold that we're in.
All right, so last question before the panel.
Yeah.
When you go around the country and you see successful communities, who's at the table? Who is working on this movement? Who is participating, and how are they doing it?
Yeah. So one of the beauties of the campaign is the diversity in the leadership that we see across this network. So 232 communities. We have organizations at the table like United Ways, like community foundations, like business leaders. We have school districts who are involved. We have libraries. We have other public agencies, other private nonprofit organizations that are leading the way. One of the things that I try to encourage folks to do is try to think about who touches the life of a child or family between birth and age 8. Where are the kids? Where are the families? And how do we make sure that we engage everyone who could possibly have a positive role and impact in supporting literacy development? And some of the most creative things I've seen have been, okay, so parents are going to be riding municipal buses. Why not put books on those buses? Or if parents are going to be spending time on athletic fields, large numbers of parents spend time on athletic fields over the weekends and in the evenings, why not have a satellite branch of a public library in the form of a little book stand there? Why not put resources out there? Why not make sure that wherever kids and families are, they have access to books, they have access to literacy, that folks like people who own barbershops in Kansas City, the great example, the barbershops have actually become mobilized as a part of their literacy campaign. So I always encourage people to think creatively and outside of the box, not the usual suspects, but it's amazing sometimes how much energy you can see from from some folks that are sort of the unpredictable, unusual allies that can kind of come about in this work.
Okay, and actually now the last question.
Okay.
What do you tell people who say, you know what, I raised my kids? This is the school's job. It's the parents' job. You know, the parents of these children, it's their job. Why should I get involved? I did my deal, I paid my taxes. What do you tell people when they make that point to you?
So, I mean, what I would always encourage folks to do is to think about, the workforce and our future society, and that basically I think everyone has a stake in making sure that kids are well prepared. And we don't want to live in a future where we just write off 80% of low-income kids. And effectively, when you look at the numbers and you say only 1 in 5 low-income kids in this country hit this milestone, we know that that's a catastrophe in the making. We know the long-term effects of that. And we all have a stake in fundamentally changing that number and changing those odds. And I would suggest that if Sarasota and Manatee can come together and do that, you guys are in a prime position to really lead the way. The way that you've mobilized a broad swath of the community to support this, I think we've got a real chance. The numbers aren't too huge and aren't too staggering here. We can really make a difference. It's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of effort from a lot of different folks, but I think it can be done.
Great. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we'll stay here.
Okay.
And because most of you know the people I'm going to introduce, the introductions are going to be very brief. First, joining us is Dr. Diana Green. She's the superintendent of the Manatee County School District. So come on up, Diana. And next is her counterpart from Sarasota, Sarasota's own Lori White. And finally, John Annis, the Vice President of Community Investment for the Community Foundation of Sarasota County. Thanks to all of y'all for joining us today. So let me just, since we have the locals up here, I'm going to ask Ron just to kind of summarize your observations of some of the things that you saw today, what jumped out at you, and what impressed you, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier how impressed I was with the mobilization effort and the results that are starting to happen here. And I think that's a testament to a lot of folks. I'm also impressed, frankly, by the space that folks have for collaboration. And I know that the Patterson Foundation and others have really made a commitment to help bring people together across the two counties, which is not something that we see everywhere. And this notion that everyone can do their respective work and do it really well and produce individual outcomes and run really good programs. But until and unless we can create some space for people to talk about the handoffs between and among those programs and how that actually aggregates up and how the same kids might get access to multiple opportunities across the spectrum from birth to 8, I think that's what excites me most here. The engagement of the school districts, frankly, is one issue that we know communities kind of struggle with sometimes, is how to do that. I think the fact that you have your superintendents here and leading this effort, providing important leadership to that. We see, the role that the schools play, the role that the broader community, the funders, the fact that you have 2 really solid plans that have been developed, that are being implemented. This is not just talk. There's a lot of action that goes with it. There's a really solid game plan for implementation. You're addressing some of those major issues that stand as impediments. But I really want to see it be successful. And I'm really excited about what I've seen so far. And I'm eager to learn more and eager to figure out if there are ways that we can help in terms of being supportive.
Great. And since this is not your first visit, but you haven't spent a lot of time here.
Right.
I would venture to say, as somebody who's been covering these 2 counties for 34 years, that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely not, 5 years ago, probably not, you would not have seen the kind of synergy between the 2 counties that you're seeing now. And that's a significant development, and it's something really that makes me proud.
Yep.
Yeah, you should. It's good. So we'll start with Diana Green. Tell us the 1 or 2 most vital steps that your school district, our school district, I've graduated from the school district. The 1 or 2 major steps that you've taken so far in regard to grade level reading.
Well, I'll stick to 1 or 2 because I think we've taken quite a few. First is starting the whole grade level reading initiative, and as a community writing our plan and submitting it and it being approved was sort of the catalyst that made our school district make a conscious effort that we are going to be a major player at the table. Many times we are benefactors of what people do for us. And all too often, we don't collaborate to say, how can we do this together? Or sometimes, as school districts, we just want you to give it to us and let us take it from that point. But this was an opportunity for us to work with our nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, our local college and university, to really make a conscious effort that it is not good enough of what we're doing today. For Manatee, for us, this is very urgent. We have 1,175 third graders that scored in the bottom quartile. That means that's their first flag that they could possibly be retained. And as Mr. Fairchild shared, it's a very good predictor of, for these students, not a very bright future for them, or the possibility of not having a bright future. So for us, this was a mandate that we needed to embark on. And as a school district, we need to be that beacon. And so through our Title I funds, this year we were very fortunate to receive $3 million additional dollars. And we made the commitment that those dollars are going to all go towards grade level reading. And the first thing we did was we researched and looked at what was our #1 problem, and for us it was the chronic absenteeism. 30% of our students who attend Title I schools miss 10 or more days, 10% miss 25 or more days. And so, 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but for us, that equates to over 1,000 students who are missing 25 or more days just at our 15 Title I elementary schools. So the position, the graduation enhancement tech, I can't take credit for that name. I want to give credit to Elena Garcia. She's the director of federal programs, and she kept saying, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure them every possibility to graduate. And so the technicians really will be mentors to the students that they will be serving. Their number one focus is on chronic absenteeism, and they will not only track the students, but they will make home visits. They will engage with the family. They will find out what are the root causes of why the student is not coming to school. And then they will partner with our social workers, because many times they need connection to other agencies that aren't the school district. And so our social workers will work with the GETs, as we call them, and then connect these families to services that they need. We, at each school that will have a GET position, they will have what we call the GET task force. So that task force will include the principal, the guidance counselor, the social worker, school psychologist, and the individual who is the graduation enhancement tech. And they will devise sort of work plans for students that have major outside issues related to their families, so that we can connect their families to agencies that can support them, as well as focus on the student. Part of the task force is to also implement a framework called Check and Connect. It is one of the few research-based attendance frameworks in the country, and all of our GETs will be trained in August, along with our district coordinator. So we thought this was so important that our district coordinator will provide training to them. They will check in with them once a month. They will run reports, and so on a quarterly basis, myself along with the leadership team will review how are we doing with attendance. And if we see areas that need to be improved, then the district task force will then work with that school. How do we help continue working with that particular school that may not be making the progress that we want them to? So those are, for us, I would say, two of the major initiatives. I could keep going, but I'll stop there.
Well, thank you. And so, yeah. And so for the audience, so Title I schools are essentially the low-income, the schools with the highest proportion of low-income students.
That is correct.
And you get additional federal dollars for
Yes.
that. And so, and that's where that funding is coming
Yes.
from for these. So, all right, so Lori White, it's kind of the same question. The most vital steps that the Sarasota district has taken in your view?
Well, I think one of our areas of focus has been that summer reading lab and how we can provide quality summer programming that is fun and exciting and memorable for our students, and not only engages the students, but the families and parents as well, so they come along. So we have developed Eagle Academy at one of our schools. It's become a model for us because of the considerable results that was able to be funded through donations. Community foundations and the Hensons were key in that. And it has allowed us to really analyze what are the key factors we need to see in summer programs to have that level of success. It's unique, I think, in the quality of the parent university, as we call it, weekly opportunities for parents to have a family night with their children and learn as part of the expectation of having your child attend this program, but also providing for some of our parents the opportunity to hone their own career skills so that they actually had a CNA program on site at the same time so that parents could bring their quality of life by having access to jobs at a higher rate of pay. So that's a model that we would be looking at expanding. So next summer, we're having 3 additional Title I schools that will have entering kindergarten be a part of that as we work towards trying to find funding, which is always the challenge for enhancing that. But in the meantime, I think we're looking at ways to partner with our community in meaningful ways that they can have the quality programs that you mentioned at the Boys and Girls Club and Girls Inc. We help with the program design, but the certified teachers, but also giving them the data about the students, because I think that's the question you had, how do we measure success? And that's difficult in those kind of programs. Did it work? And so we're actually partnering, giving them data before, so they know what are the areas that we see as needed to be targeted, what are the strategies that these students will benefit. We will then, when they come back to school, be able to see how did they do? What's that post-test telling us? How are they progressing? And do some analyzing, how did that compare with similar students who didn't get this opportunity? So I think there's a lot of learning that can occur as we refine this and we partner in multiple ways. So I think that certainly has been an area of focus. We also are looking at some attendance initiatives because it is so true what you're saying. You don't realize the problem until you start to unpack that 95% average daily attendance looks so good until you start to unpack it. We've had a similar realization that becomes a data element. There's specific strategies with existing staff to focus and target on those students and work with those social workers to try to remove some of those obstacles. The other piece, though, I think that is key that we own as a school district is continue to find ways to optimize the time that they are with us during that school year to the best of our ability to bring every child to the highest level possible. We're looking at reading recovery as a program that will be expanded in several of our Title I elementaries, which is the other key grade level is we find at first grade there are students that start really feeling challenged and they start to disengage because they don't have the fluency that is required. This is an expensive but one-on-one type of program, intensive over a short period of time, very research-based, that if we can get them over that hump through that kind of intensive first grade program, they seem to be good to go through second and third. So we're continuing to find ways to refine what we do during the school day to optimize those programs.
Great, thanks. So we'll start with Diana Green first. And I mentioned this in what I sent everybody in advance. Think big here. This is not the school board out here, so you don't.
Well, two of them are there.
So get out your magic wand and wave it and say, you know what? But for billions of dollars, millions of dollars, I would love for Manatee counties to have what for its early learning programs and for kids before they even enter school or before they reach third grade?
Well, you know, one of the, and I am very proud that two of Manatee County school board members are here, Mr. Dave Miner and Miss Karen Carpenter. So I wanted to make sure we give them credit for being here this evening. You said think big. We've already thought big. The first thing we've done is, in coming in, is we started our Title I pre-K. For many parents of poverty, the number one roadblock for them for putting their children in high quality early is the fact they can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And so we started Title I pre-K this past year under the direction of Dr. Robin Thompson, and also invested in a software program called Footsteps to Brilliance. This is a digital library. The one thing that I need everyone to understand is that our children are digital natives. We are digital immigrants. We are the ones who, they know, it's like.
Actually, I'm a dropout.
Yeah. You know, I have a 2-year-old nephew, and if I give him my iPhone, he'll look for the little games on my iPhone, and he can work it. So we are trying to take advantage of that through our early literacy program in pre-K, for Title I pre-K. And this instructional software, it has thousands of books that they can access. You simply touch it, it downloads, and it has dual language. So for our students, they can listen to books in Spanish and then convert it over to English, or listen in English, then convert it over to Spanish. Nursery rhymes, songs, games, all the things that we need students engage in. As Mr. Fairchild said, for the child of poverty and the middle to upper income, there's a 30 million vocabulary gap before they hit us at kindergarten. And through Footsteps to Brilliance, they are being exposed, they are accessing that vocabulary. Our parents of poverty, they don't have computers at home, they may not have iPads, but they have mobile devices. And because this program works on a mobile device, whether it's Apple or Android, as well as they have access to it during the school day, we piloted this summer with our pre-K kindergarten hybrid summer school. And the 40 students that participated, we had a parent university, similar to what you were talking about, and we trained all the parents, and they brought their children, and we trained the children on their mobile devices, and the program's been running for 6 weeks, and today, those 40 students have accessed over 1 million vocabulary words, they've read over 2,000 books, and have engaged in early literacy activities that we are now, all these students attended our Title I pre-K, so they've made all the gains the 9 months we had them. We kept the water faucet going, and so now when they start in kindergarten, they are not going to be behind their peers. So we are thinking big. So, but we've just begun. So the big dream is that we're going to continue this. We only have Footsteps to Brilliance now with a small number of our students. But what if our libraries had Footsteps to Brilliance? What if our other agencies had Footsteps to Brilliance? What if it's available at the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club? So for those young children, whether they're with us or not with, they now have access to digital books, because we may not like that that's where it's going, but for our students, they know how to use that technology, and so we have to embrace it and now use it for good for our students.
Great. And if anybody wants to write a check, they can come up to you afterwards?
They may, or I'll have them find Phil Brown.
Lori, think big.
I think we are on the road to finding success with the partnerships that we have in place. We have to find ways to extend from that school day for those students that are struggling to go where they're going, to go where they're at, to enhance that learning process. That means before and after school, it's weekends, and it's summer. And I think there are ways we can partner together to extend that learning time, and we're doing it really right now. Much of it is through that digital access where we, Education Foundation is putting in our community centers, the computers, we're providing software, much of which is the digital books, and providing then other resources of what can we do to encourage students to access those types of meaningful activities. After school, on the weekends, looking at resources that we can drive to the homes. It's amazing. Even in homes of poverty, they sometimes have those devices that can download some of those experiences and texts, and can enhance through our parent universities of how do you maximize that. So I think there are ways, because frankly, school districts cannot do this work alone. And it's not just about writing out that check. We need our community partners to, wherever they're at, whether there's a library, a community center, or at the home, to create learning environments for our children. That's how we can truly accomplish this goal. And I think we have the will and that we have the expertise to really provide that, and we've got wonderful models now in place to demonstrate it is working, and we have the data that shows those students that are in those programs accessing those tools are showing gains over those students that don't have those advantages. So I think we have the roadmap. It's just expanding it, much as Diana said, to more and more students throughout our community.
Great. So thank you for the segue to John Annis of the Community Foundation. So let's start with this. Actually, I'm going to back into this. So technically, you're not an educator. Technically. Technically. You work for the Herald Tribune. You were a sergeant major, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps.
Hoorah.
Hurrah. So not the softy, touchy-feely kind of background.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa. Again, I'm backing into this.
All right.
This- So what drew you to this, other than the fact that it was your job? What turned the light on with you, really, to make somebody with your background go, oh, wow, this needs to happen?
Because of the generous donors at the foundation, the Community Foundation had already been on the literacy path for many years. A program called Literacy Empowers All Families was a 5-year grant program that was addressing this literacy issue K through 8th grade. And I think when my boss, Roxy, came to town on our board, it was like, this is a good program, but we're spreading the peanut butter really thin. So we're filling in some gaps. We really can't prove that what we're doing is having as huge an impact as we think it could. In comes Deborah Jacobs, who frequently invites you to things and you're not quite sure why you're going just yet. So she called from the Patterson Foundation and said to my boss, we'd love to send John to Denver. That might have been the end of the conversation at that point, I don't know, and Roxy probably said, send him, that's fine, he can go. But I went to Denver for the All-American Cities where the Campaign for Grade Level Reading was being featured. So we were at a wonderful stage. The donor, Mrs. Noby, has passed away, but left a lot of money to our community for education, and she's funded so many things. It's a huge endowed fund. We were in a situation where we had money, and we had to bring a plan to our board to say, how are we going to use this money most effectively? I got a chance to meet with hundreds of other communities that had great plans, but they didn't have any money. So it was a perfect time to sit and talk with folks about what their strategies were. And then we came back and I talked to my board and Roxy, and then we brought the experts in, the school district, our partners, the school district, and said, here's what we're thinking. We don't know exactly how we're going to get there, but help us figure out a good plan so that it can really have an impact on this grade level reading. So we actually had to narrow our focus a bit. K through 8 was too much. So we went K through 3 for sure, and now we've moved it birth to 3 and said, we really birth to 3rd grade is where we can have the biggest impact. Lori talked about the Alta Vista program. Thanks to the Hensons, we were able to do some testing there. The Henson's theory basically was, and I remember when they spoke to our school board and said, we'll invest our personal money into this program and prove to you that any child can perform as well as any other if given the right tools. And they wrote a personal check to get it started. And we got some matching money, the foundation put in some money, and that program started with 63 kids, and they graduated today, I think. The program ended, and there's 350 kids, 350 families involved in that program, so the full wraparound care that they're getting. So that was a long answer to an easy question, but Deborah Jacobs sent me there, I think, to introduce the idea, and now to think Manatee and Sarasota with the Patterson Foundation and this umbrella Suncoast campaign is just so exciting, and to see the progress that's happened since that trip to Denver.
So tell us a little bit about, and you and I have talked about this, about the dangers of saying, you know, I'm from the Calvary, I'm from the foundation, we have money, and here's how you're going to do it. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about some of the humility you gained in this process, and the risk of coming into a situation and saying, we've got money, here's what you're going to do.
Well, I have to thank our board for the flexibility. The first time I went to our board and said, we need some money to do this. And normally I would go with a budget and a plan and all kinds of really cool things. And they said, you're right, we do. We created an education task force that met with the experts in our community and with the school district and said, we have some ideas, but we don't have an unlimited amount of money. What's the best way to use this money so that we can test out some programs and prove that it works? So we would co-create programs with other nonprofits. Ron talked about the Boys and Girls Club and Girls Inc. The Girls Inc. one is one of the most recent ones, and I love the fact that Girls Inc., a wonderful organization, submitted a proposal to us, and we didn't say it's good or bad. We said, let's take a look at it, and we'll bring Dr. Laura Kingsley in from the school district, the executive director of elementary education. And I still remember Laura's email was basically, I love this program, here's some things I would change. And there were a lot of things that she was recommending. We brought Girls Inc. back in and said, what do you think about these changes? They said, we love it. We have the same goal in mind now. We're going to measure it the same way. It was very easy as a funder and for the nonprofit and for the district to say, we have the same goal in mind. Let's just agree on how we're going to get there. We don't have to create a new evaluation system. We have one. We don't have to ask for a whole bunch of new things. Let's just work together to be successful. So I think the humility part was, you're right, we are the funder. We don't have the right ideas. I am not an educator. We have a really smart school district. We have a great superintendent that has been in her position for a long time. Everyone loves her. She should run for president, right? So, right? Yeah. We have a school board that's actively involved that comes, they visit these programs, and they don't have to be invited in a lot of cases. They just go to the programs because they're excited about them. A new principal at Tuttle, Mr. DiVerno, he came and met us before he started, and I got good advice to say, don't talk to a new principal for 6 months because they don't even know what they want. It was just the opposite with him. He was at the foundation saying, I heard you guys are doing some cool things. I want to be part of it. I would show up at VPK sites. He would be there because he wanted to know what was happening in VPK sites. He's at the Boys and Girls Club program. He's at Girls Inc. He's rubbing the kids' heads that are his students and calling them little turtles because they're the Tuttle Turtles. So this guy is actively involved, and those are the kind of partners that we need in the district to make this work and in our nonprofits. They can't see the district as someone else. The district is us. And we really do work together because we have great communication. And when Dr. Kingsley calls me or Lori calls me and says, hey, we need to talk about something, we're going to meet and we're going to have a good idea when it's all said and done. Probably their idea that I'm going to try to help implement. But.
So just very briefly, we'll be getting to questions in just a couple minutes. We've heard a little bit about the two-generation approach. Tell us a little bit about what that is and how it works and what you've seen.
Ron touched a little bit on it, and Lori did too, is that part of the Aspen Institute's Ascend network is this two-generational approach to moving families out of poverty. And it's about actually providing opportunities for vulnerable children and their parents together. So we try not to create a kids program or a parents program. We're creating a whole family program. How are we going to move the family to a better situation? It's proven to be very effective in Alta Vista and at Girls Inc. Social workers are so critical to that piece, is the social workers are going to help us identify what the family needs. Our parent universities aren't just about how you can help your child get better at school, it's how you can get better. You can get a better job, or you can get your GED, or English as a second language. It's helping the family move up together. The child is watching the parent learn. They're learning together and growing together as a family. It's just the idea of working at the whole family seems like it makes so much sense, but if you look at many programs, the programs are designed kid-focused or adult-focused. We've got to find a way to do that together. One of our other partners, Bill Russell, I see sitting here, is think of our housing, and those of you that have been here as long as you've been here, Mr. Our housing situation was horrible. Our public housing was a mess. It was in receivership, right? We had a terrible thing happening in our public housing. Enter Bill Russell, right? Now this place is a model. Other people visit our housing authority. They're one of our main partners. A lot of the kids we're trying to work with are under Bill's care. He's brought in programs at the housing authority. We're actually doing programs in the housing authority, and the kids are growing and loving it, and the families are too. So the two-gen approach, family together.
All right, great. Thank you, John. So, Ron, reactions, thoughts, suggestions?
Yeah, so I think this is teed up to produce real results and real dramatic change. And I would just encourage everybody to stay focused on that milestone of third grade reading proficiency. Avoid the temptation to try to do everything. I think that that's one of those efforts that we sometimes see, like a well-intentioned effort to do everything runs the risk of not being able to show results on anything. And if anything, we need to make sure we show some results on this. And by staying focused, by keeping this big tent approach, by working together across the boundaries of institutions, of counties, of bureaucracies, of organizations, of thinking together about how you solve these problems at scale, thinking about the continuum of what kinds of supports and opportunities that kids need, I think you're really in a great place. And so I'm excited to be here. I'm going to keep close tabs on everything that's going on here and really want to lift up and recognize the work to a broader audience. There are a lot of people who want to learn from what's happening here. So thanks.
Plus, you want to come back for spring training.
Yeah. I joke that I've kind of gotten soft moving to the Northeast because I come out here in July and August, and I don't know how people do it. I mean, it's really hot. And I never understood as a kid, like we had these snowbirds. Like what was with that? Like why were all these people coming in November, December, January, February? Now I totally get it. I totally get it living in the frozen north. So it would be great to come back down in February.
All right, time for questions. We will, if you'll just raise your hand if you have a question, and we will have a mic for you. If you haven't heard my standard little line about this when it comes to question times is, I went to church Sunday, I got my sermon. So if you could kind of just get to the question, and that would be really good. And actually, I did go this past Sunday. Okay. Yes.
Well, thanks to all of you for your energy, expertise, and enthusiasm on this. I have really a kind of a twofold question. Dr. Green focused or briefly touched on the issue of the changing role of the schools vis-a-vis the community, and how the schools and the community really have to learn new ways of relating to each other. So I'd like to hear some discussion on that. I'm also worried about the sustainability and the durability of this movement. Some of us hope we're in it for the long haul, that we'll be here for a while. We'll see several generations benefiting from this, but I don't know how long the funding community is going to stay with this. Projections are very hard. You talked about the 2 generational approaches. Are you going to stay with this for 15, 20 years to give us some good data?
All right, let's do the sustainability question, and whoever wants to jump in can.
Well, I'll start with that's obviously a board decision on how long we're going to stay with it. We have some very passionate donors that care about this. So I think the Alta Vista model is a perfect example of how this could work. When we went to Dr. Shirley, Florida's Principal of the Year last year, and said, tell us the things that are going to be required so that those children who were Eagles at the time, they were getting ready to go into kindergarten, that they will be able to read at 3rd grade. Make a list. Tell us what the list looks like. And she made a very long list. And we said yes to all the things on the list. We can fund those things, understanding this isn't forever, because we want to come back to Lori someday and say, here's all the things that are included, including All Faiths Food Bank and Big Brothers and Big Sisters and all these other partners. What are the most critical pieces that we would have to roll out that the school district would take over? So the plan was always, this is a tax-funded program. We have a $400 million budget or something. Is it how much of that can we put towards summer programming? You guys figured out, you're the experts, or especially you school board members. In most cases, Mr. Minor, the experts are sitting over here, but yes. How are we going to do this so it can be sustainable? It's not going to be philanthropy that funds it forever, but there are times for philanthropy to inject and prove things work and then turn it back over and find the most effective ways to roll it out. The 2-gen stuff is more expensive, we know that, but the changes we're making in families are going to last a lifetime. So those are the changes we have to make.
All right, Ron, are you seeing anything on the sustainability and on the national level?
Yeah, I think we're less interested in a short-term bump in the number than a change that's a durable and sustainable change in the trajectory. And what that takes is a big tent of people who are supporting it, a public-private partnership, and a commitment to stay the course, to monitor results carefully and closely, to drive with data, to make adjustments as you go, to focus on some early wins, again, to kind of really make sure that you can make the case as you're building the momentum. But I think we set out as a campaign on a 10-year effort to demonstrate that we could, in at least a dozen states, increase by 100% the number of low-income kids that are reading proficiently. I think we can do that. I think it takes very clear goals as a community to set something out that's very ambitious. Say that you're going to double the number. Say that you're going to cut the number in half, and then work at it, monitor those results, and keep people focused on that. Because sometimes these efforts tend to get very big and it starts to disintegrate. And we need to have that integrated force around that stake in the ground, that consistent milestone. I think that's one of the real keys.
All right, quickly, I'll ask the superintendent just to talk a little bit about relationships between the school district and schools and the community. And we'll start with Diana.
Well, part of our initiative is we hired a liaison, Dr. Sheila Helpin, who is our grade level reading liaison between our Title I schools, the grade level initiative committee itself, and then our community. So she's sort of going to be the glue that holds us together. And for us to sustain this, I will submit to Ms. Carpenter and Mr. Minor, keep me as your superintendent. And
Here, here, here.
that will definitely add some opportunity, but
You're pretty good. You're pretty good at this. You've done pretty good.
but seriously, this is much bigger than me.
Right.
Because we have great people who have also decided they're committed to this. There is an incentive. When you live next door to Sarasota County, one of the top school districts in the nation and in our state, it truly inspires you that we know that we can do this too. It's not that they have some type of magic something in their water that all of a sudden they can do something better than we can.
The water comes from Manatee.
Yeah. Maybe we need to put something in it then. But, you know, the partnership, working together, and so it's inspired us that we know that we can equally, Manatee can get to where Sarasota is, and we're going to look to them for their expertise and look inward to our expertise. But we have built that infrastructure and framework where we are going to help our schools connect to our communities, and our communities connecting with our schools, as well as our nonprofit and other support agencies that these families truly need to be connected to.
Great. And my only editorial comment this evening would be, let's just say that the Manatee School District has had some challenges.
Absolutely.
And I would submit that this campaign is the kind of thing that the community can rally around and come back
Yes, absolutely.
in a positive way. So
It's the beginning of a movement. It's a movement that I think Bronwyn, Vice President of United Way, said it very eloquently today. This is the beginning of a movement to change and enhance our community.
So, Lori, if you would just very briefly, we were on another panel, and we were talking about how with Sarasota County has the additional $1 million property tax, that the voters are constituents.
Absolutely.
They're a part of the school district. Talk to us a little bit about the relationship with the public and the voters and how you've nurtured that.
Well, that to me is an investment of our voters in the school district. And we take that very seriously and are very transparent and really feel that they are true partners in this, every community member. So we find ways to inform them of how we're doing, and we're real honest with that. So there's this trust that has to be there. But it also has to be that personal relationship that each school has with their community that surrounds them and their families. And how do we continue to strengthen that and give them the tools? That means you remove some of the barriers that sometimes we create with bureaucracies that get in the way, where, oh, you can't have access to this data. We figure out ways to give our partners the data they need so that they can be more targeted. We're starting next year, for example, conversations between our kindergarten teachers and the pre-K teachers that feed those schools. Sometimes it's not something we do at the district level, it's something that happens within each of those schools that moves it even beyond the Title I schools. Because I will tell you, we have students that are living in poverty in every single one of our schools. Title I's have huge percentages that need to be a focus, but they're in every school. And we have to find ways to expand just beyond Title I, and we have to find ways to expand beyond just the federal additional dollars, because they're out there and they'll be left behind without those resources. And I am so thankful to live in a community that what is in our next year's budget is $48 million more than what we would receive from the state, which believe
Some of that.
but that's a huge investment that our community makes that is making a tremendous difference. So it's an advantage we have, and we try to maximize that. But I would tell you, you would not see the results we have with our test results and what we've been able to accomplish without that commitment of our community taxpayers.
I just had a quick question. As a product of a lower income family, and I was fortunate enough to kind of be a part of summer programs, you mentioned briefly faith-based organizations, and I found in my experience a lot of the families that are in that lower bracket are deeply influenced by their faith-based organizations. And I was wondering if Mr. Fairchild or possibly either of the superintendents could speak on some of those initiatives connecting to the faith-based organizations.
Right. Good question. Thank you.
Well, I would like to share about one particular faith-based organization that we are connected to. But before I do that, I do want to say that this is the first summer that all of our Title I schools had summer school. And we called it Camp Rise. Students were engaged for 6 weeks during the morning, similar to your program, in high-quality literacy instruction, and then the afternoon was all hands-on, and each week it was centered around a STEM theme, so zoology, nature. So our students had a field trip at the end of each week tied to that theme, where they would go out and pretend they were scientists for each of those field trips. But a piece of that was our connection with one of our faith-based organizations that provided a summer, what they called apprenticeship. Students that were on free and reduced lunch at the high school level would attend this apprenticeship. In the morning, they would work either at one of our schools in a position, they could be in food service or custodial, and we partnered this with grants, and those students were paid as if they were working, and they did apprenticeships. In the afternoon, they went back to class for tutoring support. But this is done through a faith-based organization. They're called the Crime Stoppers. And these students, they have a 98% graduation rate. They start in 8th grade, they stay with this program. They have not only the summer program, but then when the school year starts, they go to after-school tutoring. And we support them by giving them certified teachers. We support that tutoring program. We fund the tutoring program. That's why they have to use certified teachers. And it's a small but great opportunity where all of the students are low income. The expectations are very high for these students, and they are very rigid on what they expect from those students. And so that's why their graduation rate is at that percentage.
And we also have several faith-based opportunities or programs for after-school tutoring and during the summer, and that homework assistance, and we work with them in terms of many times they're working with our teachers, either as volunteers or as instructors. So they are a key partner, I think, with both of our school districts.
Just one observation today, our meeting of 160 plus stakeholders in Manatee was hosted by the First Baptist Church. And so just extending grace and hospitality to folks who want to work together, I think is a really great place to start. I think there are plenty of trusted messengers within our faith-based organization to parents and families look to for support and for advice and for good counsel. And I think arming those folks with really the important messages that this campaign is reinforcing so that parents and families and kids hear about how important all of this work is and how important it is to continue learning over the summer months and to take advantage of great opportunities like you did.
So just real quick, Ron. So, a lot of the voluntary pre-kindergarten programs and preschool are provided, at least in this region, by churches, synagogues, and other faith-based organizations. So what can they do to improve the quality of the care, of the education that they provide? Are there any benchmarks, any best practices that you know of?
There's been a lot of work on early childhood education standards across the country, and I think we have a pretty good working knowledge of what those standards are and what those things look like. And I think the more folks can make sure that kids are getting quality opportunities in early child care wherever they are, whether they're in a center-based program, whether they're in the care of their families, their friends, their neighbors. A very small percentage of kids nationally are actually in a formal pre-K center-based program. Far more kids are in the care of family, friends, and neighbors, and we have to figure out how we can equip a wide array of people with the kind of supports and resources and information that they need to make sure their kids are best positioned for success in school.
All right, thank you. Next, got one in the back. And
Thank you. Oh, thank you. We have a strong collaboration in the arts education community with Sarasota County Schools, and some of our teaching artists work in Manatee County too. We know that we have a lot of natural activities to connect the arts with this grade level reading campaign. I was wondering if you had any other examples throughout the country where arts education, arts organizations, and teaching artists are working with schools and communities.
thank you.
So the arts are an incredible asset in terms of engaging young people and getting them excited about literacy. And I frequently see in the summer space in particular, since we're sort of focused on that, is a great opportunity for exposure to the arts. I think the wonderful arts and cultural institutions here opening their doors, having opportunity for kids to use art as a text for learning can be incredibly powerful. I'm also really excited about, in education sometimes we like to do either or. Sometimes where we say, well, it's either reading or math, or it's either STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or the arts. And what I'm most excited about is work that sits at sort of the both and the integration of a lot of different things. And so I think that's where the real promise and the opportunity, I think, exists. And we sure could use a whole lot more artists in our schools, in our community centers, engaged in this enterprise. So I'm excited about that.
Got one down there.
I've got
down
one,
here.
2, and then 3.
Okay, you pick.
I'll hold it.
I'm going to stand up.
Okay, that's fine.
My name is Saul Copeland, for those of you who know me here and don't know me. Okay, thank you. I've spent a lot of time working with Take Stock in Children, mentoring students, and involved in probably the neighborhood and community that everybody understands is the toughest in Sarasota, and that's the Newtown community. I would wonder if there is a way to bring a forum like this into Newtown community, because there is the greatest need for everything that you're talking about is right there, and there needs to be some community involvement. I get the feeling in talking with a few of the parents that they feel like we're just passed over and nobody really cares about us. And I think the community needs to be involved to get these kind of programs off the ground there. I believe faith-based would work. I have had some ideas that I've tried to talk to other people in the community. I think out of the box. I'm known as a pain in the neck. And I hate to admit it, I'm also known to talk too much, so I'm going to try to stop and see if there's something that could be done.
You know what, we should talk afterwards, and we can discuss how we can do something like that. I think it's a great idea.
But there are some things happening that are exciting. The United Way of Sarasota has a faith or a place-based initiative at Booker Middle, which is really expanding into the entire community and giving them access, all families access to different supports, so that they see the school not just as a place where students are educated, but as a way they as families can get resources. So there's some exciting things happening that really bring opportunities for us to bring this in. Maybe this isn't the way that that community really chooses to gain information, because sometimes this is just one more meeting and we want to see the proof that things are going to change. If we can get them in the door of that school, and we feel we're making strides in that area, we're already working with several faith-based initiatives, and Emma E. Booker, which is a community school there, also has some programming this summer that really did start to engage the community. So I think there's some exciting possibilities that we can grow from that are occurring in that community.
Anybody else?
Got a question.
Okay, yes.
Hi. I'm used to holding it myself. I just wanted us to not forget about the, when we're talking about faith-based, to forget the not-for-profits, because the not-for-profits are very involved in the school system. I happen to work for Jewish Family and Children's Service part-time. We're in 5 schools where we provide mentors and tutors for the students. We run a summer camp during the summer for middle schoolers. We have a camp called Mariposa where we take students who have drug and alcohol in their environment and in their homes, and we take them out every 2 months into a camp where we show them that there's more to life than what it is they're living with. So not-for-profits can do a lot to help our school system. We just have to be open to the idea that there are other resources out there for us to use.
All right. So we'll ask the superintendents. It's probably, you have a lot of people say, we want to help. What do you look for when people say, we want to help? Because I always wonder about that. But what do you, in other words, what does, from where you sit, what do you need the most from nonprofits and from the community?
Well, we are very fortunate. I think both districts are very fortunate that our not-for-profits are very engaged in the school system. We have a program called Reading Pals that is with the United Way. They are working with 5 of our elementary schools, of course, Title I elementary schools, and we have over 150 volunteers who come and work with kindergartners at least an hour a week, engaged in literacy activities and sort of mentoring those students. And our goal is that once they work with them in kindergarten, then they'll follow them to 1st grade and stay with that particular student. I think what we look for, one of the issues as a superintendent, is that we have so much going on, but they're not connected. We also have the Jewish Family Center at Lincoln Middle School. And that other faith, the young man who was over here, that other faith-based organization also works with Lincoln Middle School. But I don't know that that organization talks to this organization, or when the students are through with Reading Pals and they're going to some, do we connect to our big brothers and big sisters? So for us, we have so much going on, but we're not collectively coming together. Is what we're doing actually working? Is it, and if it is working, how do I now see this child here who needs services? I'm now going to put you with that program because I know that program will work for you. So for us, it's connecting. And I think the not-for-profits will say the same thing, or the faith-based organizations will say the same thing, is we're all working in our own little silos, and there's no connection to the silos, and we need to work on that.
Thank you.
And I agree that that is the challenge of how we remain connected and how we can do it in a way that is as easy as possible, because no one has enough time for all the meetings that might be required for that communication. And I think in Sarasota County, we've got some possibilities. Scope has some new software in terms of community-wide strategic planning, where this is a district-wide goal. And there's a possibility for organizations that are working towards improving that, put right digitally in a very visible way what they're doing and what their results are. And so I think we've got to maximize technology as a way of communicating with each other and where people can see connections. I think there's a willingness to connect once they see, wow, I wonder if we could talk and see what they're doing because we'd like to incorporate that in our program. And we've got to look at technology as a way of leveraging that communication because we live in a time that, thank goodness, we don't have to sit in meetings all the time just to find out what each other are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love sports metaphors, and a lot of people talk about this work being a marathon and not a sprint. But I think increasingly it's a relay race. And what both superintendents talked about are people not always knowing how to pass the baton and things that slip through the cracks. And volunteerism for the sake of volunteerism rather than volunteerism that's focused and targeted on a goal, or programs that are united under a banner or putting a stake in the ground around one thing as a community we can all care about, we can all consider to be important, and we can all row the same direction on across the county boundary, across Sarasota and Manatee. And if we can really focus on how to help kids and families make those transitions so that kids who get great programs during the summer also get access to really quality volunteers and mentors during the school year, get access to an after-school program, the same kids get access to a great summer program. If we can do that hard work of knitting some of this together, I think that that's where we're going to really see a transformative effect. Because right now we got a lot of good isolated outcomes, and everybody wants to show positive outcomes, and some programs try to one-up the other program on how great their outcomes are. And we've got all these great programs with great outcomes, but why does the population level metric on grade level reading not move, despite all of our well-intentioned investments? And the reason it doesn't move is because not enough kids get enough concentrated effort over a long enough period of time in those quality programs. That's the hard work, and I hope that the campaign can be a force for that kind of integration.
Okay, one last question.
I was wondering if you have data showing that these interventions are being sustained through middle school and beyond, because getting them to grade level is great, but then if it all falls apart because they don't have all the technicians and the support once they go on, have we invested and then kind of lost ground once they get out of elementary school?
All right, start with you, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm a former middle school teacher, so full disclosure.
3 years, right?
Yeah. So, I think about it this way. I mean, I think the notion here is that it's far easier and far better for us to intervene early. It costs a whole lot less to do prevention than it does to do remediation and intervention later. But it's not as if once we get kids to third grade reading proficiency, we're done. Of course, kids need to have wonderful, enriching opportunities throughout education. All we're saying is that this is a critical milestone, that we have to be clear about making sure that kids hit it.
All right, it's that hour, and sorry we can't get into all the questions. Dr. Green, if you wouldn't mind handing Beth Duda the microphone there, and she's going to just briefly explain how you can follow the grade level reading campaign, the Suncoast campaign.
Absolutely. We have flyers that are out at the front table, and several of us also have them in our hands if you'd like to see them. And we have Facebook as well as Twitter. We have our handles. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook. A lot of the information about the programming and the partnerships that are coming down the pike will be on Facebook, with opportunities for volunteers, opportunities for support of all different kinds. We have a newsletter. We would love for you to sign up for the newsletter. More immediately, the Giving Challenge is coming up on September 1st. And United Way Manatee has pledged the money that they raise through the Giving Challenge to the campaign for grade level reading. That is also included on the flyer, along with the opportunity that the Patterson Foundation is doing a one-to-one match for new online donations of up to $250. So it's a great opportunity to really get some funds behind some of the programming that we're looking to put forth. And we are looking forward to really building the network, because it is a movement, and it's going to take all of us to give of the resources that we have, be they volunteer resources, financial resources, or mental resources, to really make a difference in our community.
Great, thank you very much. And I must say that you can always read the Herald Tribune or go to heraldtribune.com and learn more about this. You can watch the rebroadcast or tell your friends and neighbors that this has been scintillating. So really, I thank my friend John Annis, our visitor Ron Fairchild, our two terrific superintendents for being here, spending your valuable time. Thank you to all of you for coming tonight. And you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Goodbye, everyone. No. Thank you very much for attending tonight. This is one of many, we hope, as Bronlyn, who's sitting back there, do a shout out, named it a movement today. So we're in the movement of grade level reading for our communities. And with the help of the Suncoast partnership with the Patterson, we really hope that that umbrella pushes us forward into a community-wide movement that's larger than what we can think today. Thank you very much for attending.
I got to call my wife.